Ohio. We're high on Ohio. These stories inform and inspire through the words of people who make Ohio home. Good news and good ideas, identifying and acknowledging the excellence that is all around us. A fictional character once said that the only thing that is bad for business is uncertainty. What can the state do to minimize uncertainty for our businesses, consumers, and providers during this period of significant change in our healthcare system?
Well, we need to set a policy that's clear and consistent. Tax policy would be one in particular. One of the major changes that we had recently, of course, was a conversion from the tangible personal property tax to the commercial activity tax. And now that that's been in place for a while, businesses can structure their business around that tax formula. When it comes to economic development or other kinds of incentives, we need to be consistent in what we're going to do and what that end goal is actually going to be. Job training fits into that. I would say in my wheelhouse, drug addiction services fit into that. We need to be consistent in the policies that the state has so that just because we get a change in governorship or a swing in the House of the majority, that the end game remains the same and businesses can actually plan where they're going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now, just not on a 2-year budget cycle like the state.
And you're talking about planning. Planning relies to a certain degree upon data, and if you can't manage it, you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Correct.
And so in addition to healthcare, you've carved out an area of expertise in local government reform, especially concerning how local governments could do better data collection. Do you have any observations you can share with the Ohioan watching this at this point in time on that topic?
Sure. Growing up here in Ohio, being born in Ohio, I'm just a through and through Ohioan for, 8 generations now. But the way the rest of the states work isn't quite like Ohio. They're all unique. And Ohio very much has a local government flavor to it. Some states, the state provides funding for pretty much everything. But here in Ohio, we have a combination of state and local. We believe in that individual responsibility all the way down to the school or the health district or the mental health issues, whatever they're going to be, there's a shared responsibility there. So when we talk about how that's going to play out at the local level, we share that burden together. So as you move through that process, we are both bound. And I think that's beneficial, I might add. That's a different perspective than from other states where the state makes all those decisions. There are benefits, but there's also downfalls, which means, levies and taxes on your property because the state, as you can probably realize, just can't give you money to spend willy-nilly. Some other county could do something that you don't agree with your tax dollars and get more or less. We start picking winners and losers at the county level.
Right now, you're heavily involved in the issue of health districts in Ohio, and how many do we need, and how do we know what is the right size? Anything you can share about that topic?
Certainly. This is an issue that's been going on probably since the 60s. And, how many health districts do we actually need in Ohio? We have 126 now, and which ones are good or bad? As I worked through the health futures last summer, one of the things we wanted to do for sure was standardize what we were measuring and then make those measurements consistent to every single health district. Just because someone's small or someone's big or they specialize in this, that, and the other doesn't mean they're doing the job effectively. When we talk about public health, the spread of diseases, everything from bird flu to sexually transmitted diseases to tuberculosis, we want to make sure that the public health of the state of Ohio is being shared, the burden and the effectiveness is consistent across the state. So we don't have outbreaks of disease just because a health district was weak in one area.
Changing topics to more of a macro 30,000-foot question. Your Senate seat is rural and suburban, and for probably 200 and some years there's been chatter in Ohio about this urban-rural divide. Are the pundits overstating it? Is it as real as it really seems to be according to a lot of the newspaper columnists out there? Or is it just being overblown?
No, I'd say it's real, but I'd say it's enjoyable. It's part of the makeup of our state. When you think about Illinois, for example, the only thing you think of Chicago. When you think of New York, the only place you think of is New York City. The list goes on. Ohio, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo. Very diverse, right? Altogether, that'd be one big city. But that's counterbalanced by the small areas that I represent. Thankfully, agriculture is the #1 industry here in the state. So those concerns find their way down to Columbus. So I think the dynamics of our state, not being dependent on a single city, not being dependent on a single tax source, actually makes for a pretty strong state. I'm proud of that.
One of our strengths in this state traditionally has been our youth. But now everybody here in Ohio is very concerned about brain drain, where our best and brightest are going to both coasts or to Chicago. How do we stop that? Can we stop that? And does the state have a role in helping stop the brain drain?
Very much so. At the national level and the world level, we compete with other states and other countries to bring jobs to our state. And that's business, be clear. Some of those are started by individuals, small startups, entrepreneurship. Others of them are acquired from other places in the world or across our country that decide to locate in Ohio. You can be a nuclear physicist, but if we don't have a job for a nuclear physicist in the state of Ohio, you're leaving. Granted, we don't have beaches. We don't have sunshine 350 days of the year, and it's never going to be 90 degrees in December, generally. But with that being said, we do have a lot of good strengths. And Ohio has the ability with resources, natural gas, look at the shale gas, look at Lake Erie, fresh water, topography, right? We're leading in rail, roads. This is a solid state to locate in. We need to sell our state so that people, employers, want to hire here in Ohio and we can keep our kids at home.
And what is it? We're within 600 miles of 80% of the population of North America.
It's huge. Well, I mean, we can be in Washington, D.C. in what, 9 hours, Chicago in 5, New York in 12. I mean, these are one-day trips to significant parts of our country. We're in a really good position here in Ohio, and we should start utilizing it.
Final question, the question I ask every single one of our participants here, and thank you again for coming. What, from a public policy perspective, keeps you awake at night?
Well, I'll answer that as my predecessor would have answered it, Warren G. Harding, my friends. You know, the legislature is a very dynamic group of people, and you're never quite sure how they're going to react to a situation. Democrat or Republican, it doesn't make a difference. Folks are like me. They bring a different set of background, different set of values, look at situations in different ways. You're never quite sure how that's going to be interpreted on a bill that you're working on an issue that somebody else is working on. You know, we have these scary words called caucus, where we all come together as a group and talk about issues. It's pretty dynamic. But Gene, I have to tell you in a nutshell, you just never know what the end game is going to be because you're working with people.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Senator, for coming in and sharing your thoughts with Bobby and Betty Buckeye as we try to part the curtain a little bit here and show them how Ohio works and increase the civic capacity in this great state. Thank you again. To find out more about this issue or other similar videos, please go to www.communitysolutions.com, where you will find all sorts of interesting research on various public policy issues, and you can sign up to receive updates. I'm Gene Krebs, and we're all high on Ohio.